Okay, y'all, let's get a groove on for today's episode. As y'all can still see, I'm still working on cleaning up the place, but guys, if I were to tell you I work 40 hours a week, I vlog, I podcast, I run a business, I'm revamping the whole entire thing, mind you. So I cannot tell you, like, I've got so much on my plate that the plate, I don't know how it's standing. I don't. It feels like I'm one of those waitresses and I have a whole stack going on and like it's gonna fall any second. That's how I feel. But that explains that. Let's get into today's episode because it's one that I've wanted to talk about for a good minute. Now, if y'all remember, keep in mind, I have a whole curated list of episodes going up until New Year's of like 2020, like going into 2025. So I have episodes planned out for the whole year. I have been messing around with the order because there's books that involve some of these podcasts. So sometimes, like, these podcasts are based off of like books I'm reading. And I don't always get to finish them because when do I have the time? But there's also just some topics that I'm like more passionate about than books. Maybe that's because I'm reading a bunch of self-help books and I get bored with them because a lot of them you start to see the repetition in what you're reading and you're like, okay, how am I supposed to talk about this? I already talked about it. And at first I kind of felt this way about this episode until I realized like there are some things that need to be drilled into your head more than once because they're topics that just don't sit in your brain until you really kind of delve into it because you don't really realize how much certain things affect a variety of other things. So today's episode is working on my trust issues, and I'm just going to kind of sum it all up real quick just to, kind of get back to what I was saying. But you have to work on yourself, right? In order to get over those trust issues. And what have I been saying in almost every episode? Work on yourself. And I can't tell you that, like, it's not going to drill into your head. You're going to be like, yeah, okay, like, I need to work on myself. Cool. But, like, it doesn't drill into your head until you realize how much of your life it affects. Like, it affects yourself, your self-esteem, your relationships. I could go on and on and on. But my point is that drilling that into your head you won't get it until you realize how much it affects in your life. And that's kind of why I like topics that show that kind of umbrella of what it means to work on yourself and what you can do, how you can do it, and the outcomes that it can change, because there's so many different outcomes it can change. You can change so much by working on yourself and taking the time and accountability to figure your shit out. So, okay, before I start and truly get into it, okay, guys, I don't know what happened, but I can already tell all of my notes aren't here because I just wrote a note and it somehow did not connect. So we are partially going with the flow right now. So the first thing that I wanted to say is that I'm not perfect. I am not in a perfect relationship. And this is a very important part for me to preface because, like, I don't have all the answers. Nobody does. But I can tell you what has worked for me and I can tell you what hasn't worked for me. And you can kind of take those experiences as you see fit because our lives, none of us really know what we're doing. We kind of just walk through life in this trial and error. So we all go through life based on experiences. Your mom might say, don't do this or don't do that. It's probably because she experienced something in which she's trying to help you out. And I don't want to say I'm a mom because I'm definitely not. But that's kind of the same gist is I'm trying to give y'all advice based on my experiences, what I've been through, what has worked for me, what hasn't. And also just talk about topics that maybe not everybody is talking about, or maybe some people are talking about it, but it's not heard enough. Whatever the case may be, I feel like these are some topics that I feel passionately about, so I'm like ready to go for them. Um, but let's talk about trust issues. So trust issues are going to stem straight from yourself. And while I mentioned that I'm not in a perfect relationship, that I'm not a perfect person, you guys see what you see online, right? You guys see whatever you see on everybody's relationships, everybody's personal life. You see what you see online. And that's me trying to say, don't compare yourself to what you see online because relationships aren't perfect and happy every single day. People are not perfect and happy every single day. Most of what you see on social media is the good. You see mostly good, right? Maybe some people are talking about their experiences, but what I've learned is not a lot of people talk about experiences while they're going through them. It's more so, hey, I've overcome this. Um, like you see people that are like fitness content creators or influencers, and you see them like go through their journeys. Maybe they had a disordered eating, maybe they had struggles with self-esteem, maybe they had body issues and body image issues or anything like that. You don't know what their past is unless they've expressed that, and sometimes they do, but it's like you never really see someone like actively going through the bad. And like, I think that goes to show, I don't want to say social media is fake, but social media is definitely enhanced and you really only see the good. And I kind of want to make it to a point to like, not like show you guys the bad because like, I should be handling that personally, but like, we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it when it does come. We don't always have to talk about the bad when it's in the past. Like, it's okay to like admit when you're struggling. And like, for me personally, like, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I'm struggling. And this is why I kind of like the fact that we're talking about this issue because this is an issue that I feel like I'm currently struggling with and I'm currently like trying to navigate. Okay. So just keep that in mind because like happy relationships take a lot of work, communication, love, respect, and like so many other factors. So don't compare what you see online, especially when it comes to other people in their relationships, because you only see what they put online. And if they're in a happy relationship, you're not going to see behind closed doors the fights that they go through, the communication that they go between each other. You're not going to see them make up. You're not going to see them fight. You're not going to see any of the bad. You're going to see what they've posted. And another point that I want to make, and this is very, very important when it comes to trust, because I feel like a lot of people are aware of this and a lot of people do follow this. Maybe not everyone, but I feel like this is something that I'm just going to say and then I'll explain it. So the grass is not greener on the other side. It's only green where you water it. And that goes to show like if you're putting in effort into your relationships, that's what's going to make it work. If you are not watering it, it's not going to be green. And it's certainly not going to be green on the other side. Not saying that people in relationships are like looking at other people, but like you always hear the phrase like the grass is not greener on the other side. And it's just trying to say that like you might think being single or being with somebody else, the grass is going to be greener, but that's not always necessarily true. I mean, the single part can depend on what you need to go through and what you need to work through, but use that at your own discretion and at your own understanding of yourself, because some people need to like work on themselves before they get into a relationship, but that's a whole different other story, and I feel like we kind of touched on that a little bit last episode. So let's talk about trust issues and commitment issues in relationships specifically, and also we'll touch on working on your trust issues in and of yourself, whether you're in a relationship or not. So, how do you get past the fear of like commitment with a partner long term or marriage or those ideas and not self-sabotage? Because whether or not you realize you're afraid of commitment or whether you really are or not, I feel like a lot of us, maybe not everyone, but I think a lot of us can relate to the fact that maybe when we have something good, we don't believe that we deserve it, or we don't believe that it's meant for us. And we feel like we just don't get it or don't deserve it. So we start to self sabotage in ways that we don't even realize when we're doing it. How do you get past that? Well, let's be real. You gotta be honest with yourself and cut yourself some slack. Take it easy, because it is a long process. It's something you have to go through and figure out. So you have to be able to work on yourself to the point where you're ready for that commitment and you're not going to self sabotage. Now, a lot of people struggle with this and they don't realize it until they're in a relationship, because when you're single, you don't really self sabotage what you don't have, right? So, a lot of people go into a relationship and they don't realize that they have this issue because they weren't in a position to feel said issue. And that can be very tricky because you're already in the relationship and you're like, well, now what? Because I'm dealing with this issue. Like, what do I do? Okay, here's a start. Look within to figure out the root cause. So I'll give you two examples. One could be, what is it in your childhood that made you scared to trust others? So, for example, I'm going to get deep and personal with you guys for a minute. I have a dad that I have cut off communication with for years. We don't talk anymore. But one thing that made me scared to trust was a childhood trauma with my dad. He had gotten married behind me and my brother's back, and he didn't so much lie about it as just not tell the truth. He kind of evaded saying anything altogether. And in that form, broke trust within me and him, even though that trust had already been broken for a long time. I think it really just shattered like any chance of believing in him. And I think that it made me realize that it's really hard to trust people, because like if I can't trust someone who literally helped bring me into this life, like how can I trust anybody else? So he got married behind my brother and I's back, and I remember my brother, so my dad was dating this girl, and she had two kids. So in the process of him dating her, they moved in, which was very uncomfortable for me. I was put in a very uncomfortable position. Now I'm the, not to mention, now I'm the only girl living. So I'm having my middle school torturous moments. I'm like becoming a woman, and like the only girl in the house is like like, I mean, she wasn't even my stepmom at this point. She was just the girl dating my dad, right? And then my mom, obviously she's in the picture, but she's like, she lives down the street. She's in a different place, obviously, because my parents are divorced, especially at this point. um, but I end up going to live with her for multiple reasons. One being that I didn't want anything to do with my dad, and one being this scenario. So the time I'm living kind of half and half, mostly with my mom, just for the sheer fact that I was a dancer, and my mom would take me to dance lessons more often than not. And my mom, I believe, was working there for a short period of time. I don't know if this was around the same time or not because my memory is shot, but down to the nitty gritty. My dad asked me to babysit the children, her children that like we had just like no business being, like my brother had no business babysitting them respectfully. Like he was just like, these people were brought into our lives with like no rhyme or reason. My dad just like moved them in. Like it was just not a fun time because I feel like this was very like imposed on us. And like, even though we're children and we don't really have a say, at some point it's like, where is your respect for your children? Like, you don't really include them on this decision. You kind of just do what you want when you want. And I remember I forgot something at my dad's house. I don't know if it was like a pair of tap shoes or what, but this has happened a couple of times. Like I wanted to go to my dad's house, so I like slipped in and like slipped out. That's a whole other story because there's a lot of complications with that. I've learned a lot from those little tidbit moments. But this specific time when I went in, um, the first thing I was greeted with was the older son who was younger than me. Keep this in mind. Like he's younger, like, I don't know, like old enough to speak and be in elementary school. So maybe like second grade. I can't remember exactly where he was in life, but let's just say like second grade is like a good idea. Like if I could pinpoint it. So I was greeted with, Mommy and Daddy went to Las Vegas to get married. The first thing I do, pure shock, is run to my brother because I know damn well he knows and he's not taking the news well. Because keep in mind, we were imposed on all of this. So, like, we're trying to process this as children, like our dad, like flying off the handle and like making all of these manic decisions. And that was the second and last time I ever saw my brother cry. The first time was when my dad told us that he and my mom were getting a divorce. So to see my brother cry was something else. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, even though I've told this story in therapy and like kind of talked about it, to put that together and even to like say that to you guys right now, like lifted a weight off of my shoulders because I know that that is a main cause of why I can't trust people and why I struggle to trust people. Because again, if I can't trust someone who literally like I'm supposed to depend on and I'm supposed to believe in, such as my own dad, like how am I supposed to trust somebody that isn't even blood related? It's so hard and it's so much to work through. So, if anyone out there, and keep in mind, that is a very surface level thing. There are many layers to why I don't trust my dad. That was probably one of the most surface level things I could give you guys. So, that shows y'all, like, if you're really struggling, especially with trust issues, like involving like a parent or any childhood trauma, like, I'm here, I will listen because I've gone through so much shit that, like, nothing phases me at this point, and I don't want anyone to feel alone, and I want y'all to know that, like, I'm so for real about this because it's not easy to work through, and like, you don't have to do it alone. And I'll get to that because it's in here somewhere, but I just want y'all to know that. So, again, first example is what in your childhood made you scared to trust others? The second example is there a past relationship or relationships that caused you to lose trust in them, and therefore possibly you're now scared of trusting others? So, a very basic example in which happened to me is I was cheated on, and I was also sexually assaulted. Um, so those two things, actually, I've been cheated on by multiple people, but specifically, there's this one ex that I dated on and off for 6 years. He did cheat on me, and me forgiving him is all my choice and a mistake that was many mistakes ago. But having that trust broken by like being cheated on, somebody that you're in a relationship that made a commitment to you, especially like if it's a long-term relationship, like I think we were dating over a year at this point, and he literally told this girl that he was single, really just like breaks you in a way that you don't understand. And it was like me reliving that childhood trauma all over again of like, if I can't trust somebody that is literally my blood, like how can I ever trust anybody else? So that kind of idea got reinforced when this happened, and reinforced again when that same man, after I had forgiven him for cheating on me and like trying to work through our issues together because I loved him and I wanted to be with him at the time. And I didn't understand that I deserved way better, and that if I'm like looking back on it now, that was not love. That was like being manipulated to the point where like he was my only lifeline, and like he made it that way. But besides the point, that is a whole other trauma. But being sexually assaulted him while I was sleeping in the bed with him goes to a whole nother level of having your trust broken. So talking about these things are very like deep rooted, and I want y'all to like dig deep when you think about these questions, because while they can be surface level, it could just be, you know, something simple that broke your trust. It could be a little bit deeper, like being cheated on, but it can go that deep. And obviously, those wounds are harder to heal. And I think they're also somewhat easier to understand and navigate in terms of pinpointing a root cause, um, because they do run so deep and you realize that they do. But again, just that's my way of like encouraging you to dig deep to kind of figure out, is it one cause? Is there multiple? Because for me, there's multiple. I could go on and on about why I have a hard time trusting people, and how somehow I managed to give some of my trust away anyway. Like with my best friend Jessie, I will trust her with my entire life. And to give someone my trust is so important and so hard. Like, we've been friends for a while now. So, for me to say that I trust her, I feel like the years that I've spent knowing her, I've been able to, and she's been showing up for me just as much as I've been showing up for her. And, like, I feel like we have kind of that bond where I'm like, okay, I can trust her, but like it takes such a deep level to get there that I'm like, holy shit, like why is it that there's some people out there that can just outright trust and believe, and I'm sitting here struggling on like how to trust like even my girlfriend, and like figuring out like, okay, what is mentally wrong with me that like I can't get there. And it's deep and it's real, but I think the first thing is realizing that every person is different. You can't, and it's hard, but you can't compare those experiences because it's not the same person that did you dirty. And you don't realize because your brain just connects to the trauma and connects to the feeling. And like I said, I have in my mind, like, if I can't trust blood, how can I trust someone that's not? So that's ingrained into my brain where it's like, okay, well, everyone I meet isn't blood at this point. So, like, how can I trust? And for me, it comes down to like, okay, I've realized that after X, Y, and Z years and showing up for them and them showing up for me, that I can like trust them, but like it shouldn't take that much. You should be able to kind of open that trust and essentially, you know how in the law it's innocent until proven guilty? I want to get to that point of I can trust you until I can't, because everyone kind of deserves that. Like, you deserve a good chance from the start. And if you don't have that, it's not fair. If you walk into a friendship or a relationship and you don't have that like innocent until proven guilty mentality, you're not starting off on good foundation or the right foot. So that's my current struggle, and why I really want this episode like aired ASAP, because I feel like it's so important to talk about. Okay, let's move on. So if you think that these issues get to the point where it's causing harm in the relationship, you need to start looking inward and figure out if being in your current relationship is a good idea. Now, it's harder when you're in like an established relationship. This could be like even when you're like dating around and you're not in a serious committed relationship yet, or if you're in the first couple months of dating, really step back to figure out like, is this going to fuck me up more? Is this going to fuck them up more? Because like you need to realize that it's okay to be single and it's okay to be alone for a while you figure out how to work through your trust issues and your previous trauma, because you, like, before you even get into a relationship, you need to figure out who you are. You need to figure out what you want out of life. You need to figure out what you want out of yourself, what you want out of others, what you can and can't accept from someone. You need to figure out like what you struggle with and what you need to work on. There's so many different aspects of working on yourself and knowing yourself and knowing what you need and knowing what you want and knowing what you deserve, that you need to figure out all of that in order to get to a place where the past traumas and the fears are not influencing your decisions. So like when you're pre-dating, you are able to differentiate and make conscious decisions. So, like, when you meet someone, you need to be able to feel confident and comfortable that you're able to receive love, but you're also able to give love. And when, like, meeting potential partners, you want to be able to, like, determine if they're right for you rather than worrying about if they're going to like you. You need to say, okay, well, if I'm dating someone, like, this is an interview. How do I know that you deserve me? because like I know what I bring to the table. That's how it needs to be, not like this place of insecurity where you're like, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time dating. Like, it's so hard. Like, there's not good people out there. Well, you need to present the best version of yourself, and you need to present a whole version of you. If you feel like you can't be complete without somebody, you're going to struggle because you're always going to have like this anxious, like questioning and attachment when like you're not even like thinking about if this person is right for you and if this person meet your needs or if they fit into your life. Like, you have like these rose colored glasses already on. Like, sweetie, feel them out first, get to know them first, figure out if it's the right person, because if it's not, you're going to be wasting your time real quick. Okay, now that we've gone through the pre-dating, let's say you're in a committed relationship, right? Okay, please hold. That felt so good. My sugar is on the higher side, so water felt so good. Okay. So you're in a relationship with somebody and you have trust issues. Your partner can only take you so far. This is, again, I want to get into this portion too because I know that not all of my listeners or viewers are single, right? Some of us are single. I started off this show single, and now I'm in a relationship. So I want to compare and contrast both aspects because I think it's only fair that I kind of keep that going and try to talk about both aspects of it, because I don't know y'all and I don't know who's listening. I know some people that are listening, but like I don't know everybody. Everybody has a different point that their life, like they're that they're living in their life. Um, so let's say you're in a relationship, your partner can only take you so far. They can be respectful, they can be supportive, they can be communicative, they can be checking on you, they can be like such a great partner. But if you have trust issues, let's say for example, okay, in one of my past relationships, he would be liking girls' photos. And like that made me very, very insecure. You have to take accountability at some point for where you're struggling, because it can weigh on them more than you realize. So for that like simple act, would have been great to just like sit down and have a conversation and say, hey babe, like this makes me really uncomfortable when you do this. It has maybe nothing to do with you. I know that I have issues from my past where this happened and it made me feel this way. And I just want to communicate that with you because like I'm seeing like this picture that popped up on Instagram and it's of like this half naked girl and you liked it. Right? And then based on that person's response, he either says, hey, like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know it made you feel that way. Like, I'll be more conscientious of it next time. That's a good supportive partner that, like, really is trying and wants to help you. But they can only take it so far, right? They can only do so much to accommodate you and to respect you. That's where you need to also work on yourself. Let's say maybe on the flip side, you don't have a supportive partner. Maybe they start to get defensive or question you and be like, well, why does it matter? Like, it's none of your business. Whatever they say that isn't that loving and supporting side, obviously there's something in your relationship that you need to work out, and I'm going to say you probably shouldn't be with them because they don't have an ounce of respect for you if they're coming at you that way when you approach them nicely. Keep that in mind because approach is very important. You don't want it to come across like you're accusing them, because that trauma that you're holding on to is not with them. So you need to approach it, and this is something I'm working on. You need to approach it very, very gently and make sure you think of your words and how you say them, because this person is a new person. You need to trust them until proven guilty, right? Like innocent until proven guilty. That is the best way I can put trust down. There's also another quote that I like, and it's like, trust in a relationship is like gas in a car. Like if you don't have it, it's not gonna go anywhere. Um, I like that about any aspect of a relationship, whether it be trust, communication, respect. Like you can't go anywhere in that relationship if you don't have those like basic guidelines. Okay, let's move on. So, okay, let's go back to kind of like your trust issues. You're in a relationship, and maybe you are accusing them of things or kind of feeling it out, anywhere in between. You're having these trust issues and you're communicating it with your partner. You have to keep in mind that if someone isn't doing anything wrong, like let's say they're that loving and supporting partner that is just like mindless and doesn't realize that what you did hurt them, and they're going to take that corrective action, right? Let's say you keep egging them about other trust things, or maybe they liked another picture like in the past, and you happen to see it. You might like accuse them again and say like, hey, I saw you did this again, and he might be like, okay, well, I like that before you said that, like, do you want me to go and unlike every picture? Like that's not ideal. Like you don't need to go through all that, but you have to keep in mind that if someone isn't doing anything wrong, or like they're not outwardly disrespecting you, but you make them feel like they are, it can really break a person down. Like they constantly question why you're doubting them continuously, why you don't trust them. They're questioning themselves now because they're like, okay, well, what am I doing wrong? Because they keep coming at me sideways and they keep yelling at me and they keep, saying all these things that like, what am I doing wrong? And like, what's wrong with me? Because now that person is questioning themselves because they're like, okay, well, if they're continuously upset, like I'm clearly doing something wrong. That can really break a person down, and you don't realize like how much effect that can have. So they might in turn feel like they're walking on eggshells or are constantly on edge. And at some point, they're not going to be able to continue that relationship because they're going to be wanting something healthy. And if I'm going to be honest with y'all, like everyone deserves a healthy relationship. So, like, right on them if they're not doing anything wrong, and they feel like they're not doing anything to outwardly disrespect you, and you keep making them feel like they are. Because let's face it, the other person cannot make you trust them. They can't make that pain or worry or stress or doubt go away. They can only create space for you and create a space for you in which you feel safe and comforted. And if that isn't enough, then that's a sign that you need to work on yourself and your trust issues so that you can cultivate a healthy, balanced, happy, equal, and reciprocated relationship. Now, there are many ways to work on yourself. A great way to start is whether you go to therapy or do shadow work or you journal. If you can delve in to reflect and question your root problems, there's always a way to like work on yourself outside of a relationship by doing those things. For me personally, I need to find a therapist in Texas because I just got new insurance um last month. So I need to find a therapist that takes that. Um, I do shadow work occasionally. I do journal occasionally, but it's more of a gratitude journal. I don't like to actually journal. There have been times where I've pulled up my notes on my phone and I just start typing out how I'm feeling. That's a great way to get it out. um, Journaling, you can turn it into something creative, like maybe a poem or even like role playing, like a chapter of a book. Like if you love writing, creating characters or even like acting out scenarios that happen in your head and like talking them out. Um, but for me personally, I have grown to love podcasting. And I sometimes will just start a podcast that I'm like ready to record, but then I'll just rant for like 30 minutes to an hour. And it feels so good. Um, like because I'm just actively getting those words out of my mouth. And like if I could take time every single day to just get out some words and just get out how I'm feeling instead of letting it build up, I feel like that rage and that resentment and that stress and worry and whatever I'm feeling that I'm letting build up, if I just spew it out, like it would feel so good. Because I've done it before, but I don't do it consistently. And that's something that like I would strongly recommend and encourage. And I'm also going to start doing myself because you don't want to like hold things in and then like your partner is like your best friend, right? So like you're letting everything out on them. Like that's not the way to go. If you're stressed or worried or anxious or something's going on, something triggered you, you need to be able to let it out freely and personally and work through that before you ever communicate with your partner. Because when you communicate with your partner, you can't just come at them sideways. Like you have to create that safe space because that is what your partner and you are ultimately looking for. Like you chose this person because you felt safe with them, because you trusted them, because you had some sort of love and communication with them, that you need to make sure that that continues. And the only way to do that is to allow yourself to work on yourself and allow them to work on them and communicate with each other in an effective and safe and comforting way. So whatever you do, whether you want to record yourself and like even like record a little video and you just rant, or you do a voice memo. Let's say you just record, like, I don't know, your fan or like your desk. You could do that. Like, you don't have to show your face. Or maybe you want to. Maybe you want to read your facial expressions. Maybe you want to look back on it for like progress reasons. I don't know. I don't judge whatever you want to do. I'm just here to give you ideas. But what worked for me personally was getting those words out verbally. I feel like journaling was such a struggle for me because I would write and write and write. My hands would hurt. I wouldn't feel like I worked through it enough. And I feel like therapy is just talking to somebody and getting advice and getting answers. And then maybe there are certain types of therapy, like EMDR or EDMR, I forget which one it is. I can't think off the top of my head. Or is it DBT? DBT is one of them. I don't know the others. I can't think off of the top of my head. I know dang well I did an episode about it, but I forget. But there's many types of therapies, of course, but talk therapy is such a like major common one that like you don't realize how much just talking it and letting it off your chest can do. So, a great way to start is finding what works for you. So, therapy or not, think about where your issues stem from. Think about the times where there were situations where they might have caused trust issues. Again, I listed some earlier. I told y'all straight up, straight out, what my trust issues stem from. Or at least just two examples. Not all of them, but two great examples. One was childhood trauma and one was relationship trauma. Think about where yours personally stemmed from and delve deeper into each scenario. So for me, with my dad, I have to think about and delve deeper into that. So think about how that situation made you feel. Think about what part was not your wrongdoing. So, like my dad in that situation, like his wrongdoing was going behind our backs and doing something that caused us damage. Now, maybe think about if you had a part in it at all. So, personally, I was a child, but I also know that, like, not to blame myself, but to understand where my dad could have felt a certain way. I was starting to break off my relationship with him because of certain reasons that I'm not going to disclose because I don't think I want to talk about that personally, and I don't think it needs to be talked about. I think that needs to be talked about in therapy rather than my podcast. But I started to cut him off before he ever got married. So I'm personally thinking, did I ever make him feel as if he didn't have me in his life and he was trying to replace that feeling? And I'm going to be honest with you, the reason why I asked that question is because I know the answer already, but it's just trying to give you guys an example of like maybe there is a situation in which you did have a part in some sort of wrongdoing because we're not perfect. So like I said, I'll just like straight up tell you guys because like I'm not afraid to tell you guys anything anymore. So the reason why I know that, the reason why I asked that question and kind of like gave you guys that answer is because I did know that I made him feel a certain way because he expressed that to me. I know that after he got married, I distanced myself even more, and so did my brother. Um, and he had expressed to us that he felt like he was almost replacing us with these new kids in a way. Um, he didn't say it exactly like that. He said that he felt like these two kids that were like brought into his life because of her was his chance to correct his wrongdoings. And when I tell you my brother lashed out on him, bless everything, because my dad was so wrong for coming at us the way he did. He basically said, like, because he didn't have a relationship with us, that he wanted to himself. Um, to put it lightly, like he wanted to off himself. Let's let's take that in. I was a child. I was in middle school when this was said to me. And my brother is older. Not that that's any better, right? Because he's still his child, his kid. But my brother came back so hard and was basically like, you fucked up with us. So if you want to go and replace us, like, so be it. But like, you should think about like repairing our relationship with us instead of blaming us. Something along the lines of that. Like, I remember my brother going at it with him, and I remember feeling so protected by my brother, but I don't exactly like recall the words that were said verbatim. Um, but I'm getting emotional about it because I know that that was something I had to go through as a child. And that is so hard to know that, like, I made my dad feel that way, but at the same time, I'm a child. Like, I shouldn't have been put in that situation in the first place, respectfully. But now I have to sit there and I have to deal with that trauma, and that I need to figure out how to move on and be able to trust others from that. Whew. So I don't want to say that I need to blame myself, because I don't. And I don't. And I don't really need to take accountability for that because I was just a child. Like, me distancing myself, I had very valid reasons of why I distanced myself from him. It was out of protection for myself and sanity and my mental health. And good on me for doing that, because, like, not everybody can. But there might be a situation in which you took part in a wrongdoing. That wasn't the greatest example, but I can still see his point of view, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think pushing away from him or pushing him away was wrong, but I can see that it made him hurt. It's not an excuse. It's me trying to empathize and understand his point of view. And I do. And I don't take accountability in this sense because I was a child and I did it for valid reasons. But let's say I did wrongdoing in a relationship, that's a different story. So let's kind of backtrack and go into what you need to delve in. I'm going to repeat myself in some situations, just to kind of wrap it all together. So each situation that you feel that caused your trust issues, delve deeper. Think about how each situation made you feel, for one. Two, understand what your wrongdoing was, if there was one. If there wasn't, try to empathize with the other person in some way, shape, or form, like I did with my dad. Maybe I didn't do something like so and so called wrong, but maybe I had an action that might have made him feel that way. Maybe I can empathize and understand why he felt that way. Number three, think about what part was not your wrongdoing at all, and kind of figure out how you can break that down, because that is going to be kind of like your root of things. And figure out how you can unlearn and learn about trust. So what can you unlearn about that broken trust, and how can you relearn that that person is not your future person, that everyone is different, and that wrongdoing is not going to be everybody. Not everybody is going to have that same wrongdoing. Again, we're human, so like that wrongdoing like could happen again, but it could not. They could mess up in a different way because we're human, but that's besides the point. Number four, understand what baggage is yours to carry. So my trauma is mine to carry. I know that I have trust issues from my dad, and I understand that I am accountable for how I work through that trust issue. I take accountability for the fact that I have an issue because of what happened. I take accountability for the fact that I need to fix it as well. Because if I have this belief of if my blood hurt me, how can I trust someone not of blood? That is something I need to work through. And again, my way or my start in learning that is that not everybody is my dad. Not everybody is going to hurt me in the way he did. That everybody deserves a chance to be trusted until they break that trust. And then, kind of last of it is to think about what happened and what was said. So, if it is a point where you can remember, like if it's close enough in time, because we don't remember everything, right? I don't remember verbatim what was said. But if you can think about what happened or what was said, you can kind of create, okay, how did that dialogue go? Could it have gone better? What's a better way for next time for that type of dialogue? I know a lot of us have struggles with trauma and remembering things. So, like, if you struggle with trauma, sometimes it's hard to remember or recall things because you block things out of your life. But I feel even if you don't remember exactly what happened or exactly what was said, you're always going to remember how it made you feel. And that's always a great start to unlocking those deeper layers that maybe you don't even know are there. So just keep that in mind, because trauma can go so deep and have so many different, I don't know, like boxes to unlock, so to speak. So really work through those layers and take accountability. That's like one of the biggest things, is just take accountability for what you know you're going through. Like, I know I have trust issues, and I take accountability for having those trust issues and try not to bring that baggage into my current relationship. Now, it's definitely hard, but a respectful partner will understand that everyone has baggage and that you can work through it together. But that is going to take respect. That is going to take communication. That is going to take patience and understanding and so many other things, because everything is multifaceted. Everything has so many layers and working parts to it that you need to keep in mind that it's not simple. Give yourself and your partner grace, whether it be you working through it or them working through it. Give each other grace, because we are human. We let feelings affect us. We struggle. We make mistakes. We are not perfect by any means. And I think that if we keep those things in mind, that we can do better to communicate with people, communicate with friends, communicate with our partners, communicate with our family, whoever it may be, and just keep in mind that, like, we can try every single day just to do better and to work towards being a better version of ourselves. I don't want to say the best version of ourselves anymore, because I feel like I'm not perfect and I don't ever expect to be. But I feel like if I can keep working at something, that gives me something to look forward to, in a sense. So I'm going to say that I'm going to give myself grace. I'm going to do better tomorrow. I'm going to listen and speak and communicate and learn. And if I make mistakes along the way, I'm going to give myself grace, and I'm going to take that as a learning experience. And that's all I can do. And that's all you can do. Give yourself grace. Remember, we're human. Remember, we make mistakes. All we can do is learn from them. And if we can apologize for hurt along the way, I don't want to say that's all you can do, but like, show up for yourself as best as you can and show up for others as best as you can. We're human, we're not perfect, and I don't ever want anyone to think that they have to be or that they should be. I struggle with that, and I feel like I'm slowly getting better to give myself grace. Take a deep breath, guys. It feels really good. Again, take things off of your chest. If you can spend 10, 15 minutes a day just decompressing, getting out what you need to, whatever it is, whatever's bothering you, and breathe after and get that weight off of your chest, you'll start to realize that you're not building everything up and then blowing on your partner or blowing up on your partner. I love you guys so much. I'm going to end the episode here. I know it's a longer one. I tend to do some pretty long episodes, so I'm going to let y'all digest that, and I will see you guys next week. It might be a shorter episode, probably will be a shorter episode, so I'll give you guys time to digest this one, and we'll be back with a long episode again sometime soon, I'm sure. Definitely not in March, in April, but it'll be there somewhere, wherever it is. I love you guys. I will see you guys next time on Many Mistakes Ago.